Welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back. Great to have you here on our Total Wellness Tuesday episode here on the Cabral Concept, each and every day bringing you some new integrative health-based topic that hopefully you're able to use, share with others, and of course, implement into your life. So this is a big one. This is a follow-up from last week's episode. Hopefully you tuned into that. If not, I'm going to link it up here today. That was episode 2020, How Gluten and Glutamate Causes Learning Disabilities, Autoimmune Issues, and Neurological Damage. That was a big one because this is one that people are like, oh, I can eat gluten because gluten doesn't cause any, bowel issues or bloating or skin rashes. There's just so much more to it. Check out episode 2020. Today, I will link everything up today at stephencabral.com/2027. That is today's show. That's where all the show notes will be. And of course, I'll link up any particular studies or research that this is taken from. But first and foremost, what I want to do is I want to share with you again, as really I've been talking about on the show this week, and you'll definitely hear tomorrow as well on the episode. But for me, it's not about any one food or any one diet or any one person being 100% correct all of the time. So meaning that I can tell you specifically about the benefits, and I will. Why don't I do that? I'm going to give you the benefits today of nutritional yeast, right? So we're talking about yeast in general. So if we look at yeast, it's important to understand this because yeast, we can say, is natural. It's coming from nature. But we can also say in the same family as yeast that there can be candida, that there can be fungus, that there can be mold. There's different parts of it. And I'm not saying that nutritional yeast is any one of those things, although certainly there could be some elements to that, and certainly it could worsen people with issues such as candida. But we'll get into that in just a moment. But if we want to look at the benefits of nutritional yeast, we can say, why has it been so popular for so many years? Well, here's the reason why. Especially for those on a vegan-based diet or more of a plant-based diet, in 2 tablespoons, you're getting about 8 grams of protein. That's pretty phenomenal. 1 gram of fat, 5 grams of carbs, 4 grams of fiber. So that's very neutral on what it would do to your blood sugar. Again, we'll talk more about that tomorrow. But for 50 calories, you're getting 8 grams of protein. It's pretty impressive. It really is. And also, nutritional yeast has been known for many years to old school bodybuilding in the 70s. I know they always recommended nutritional yeast or nutritional yeast tablets because it contains zinc, which is obviously very powerful for building up the skin, the tissue, the muscles of the body. But nutritional yeast also has many B vitamins, specifically high in thiamine B1, riboflavin, which is B2, and paradoxin, which is vitamin B6. So all of that's absolutely true. Potassium can be elevated or nice and high in nutritional yeast as well. And then a lot of people claim that nutritional yeast is high in folate and B12, but that's usually because they are fortified with those vitamins, not necessarily super high within the natural form of yeast itself. So when you look at that, you say, okay, well, this is pretty good, but there's more, right? So when you look at yeast, you can say, all right, since it's in kind of like the fungi-based family, what we can say, and again, I'm using this loosely, so I'm just showing you the correlations between them. It's high in beta-glucans or can be fairly high in beta-glucans as well. So you might say, okay, well, beta-glucans are pretty good for the immune system. It's been shown over and over to be good for the immune system, as well as potentially healthy levels of cholesterol. So that's pretty great. It can contain chromium, which is pretty good for the blood sugar. And it seems to help with some people with fatigue. And again, that's one of the reasons why early goers to the gym in the 70s, because gyms got kind of popular in the 70s, were told to take nutritional yeast because there's actually some studies on that as well. So that's pretty fantastic when you look at it. You say, okay, well, there's some good product to this. And maybe it's right for you. But I also want to show you the other side to it. And this is the reason why we do not use it in my clinical practice. All right. This is very important. There's a reason why I don't use a lot of just necessarily like a multi made from a whole food, because the whole food, if you really look at it, in most multivitamins, it's made from yeast. And so really what you're looking at is they're taking these nutrients from yeast or grown in a yeast-based culture and then make it into a multi. So it's still made, it's still manufactured. Like, it's not literally that. Or you could take nutritional yeast. But here's the problem. Again, this is different. This is why I was in practice. I started my full-time working with people one-on-one in the year 2000. And I didn't start to formulate for any company, because I used to consult for multiple companies for nutritional supplement formulations, because it's one thing that I specialized in was the nutrients and what I saw work in practice. I didn't start that until about 2016, 2017. I had worked, and I worked through college as well, but I had worked for about, let's just say 20 years, okay? About 20 years with people before I started to do this. And so I tried for 10 years, so many things myself. And then I tried working, of course, with people and all these different nutrients as well. So I got to see what worked and what didn't work. And what I realized was that not everyone, that's certainly not true, but a fair amount of the population was having real issues with using nutritional yeast or yeast extracts in food and supplements, and I'm going to talk about that now. Again, I'm not putting down any supplement manufacturer. I'm not putting out any nutritional yeast coming down. I'm not putting them down. What I'm saying is it's a reality that some people just don't do well with these, and here's why. Nutritional yeast has the same exact chemical formula, meaning like if we look at the molecular structure of nutritional yeast, it is the same chemical formula as MSG, monosodium glutamate, okay? Now, if you've heard that MSG is bad for you, you have to understand is that nutritional or yeast is the same formula as that. So you might say, well, how can that be? Well, when you look at the actual formula, and why don't I do this? I'm going to link up anybody who wants to look at the actual chemical formula. I'll link that up in today's show notes. That'll be at stevencabral.com/2027. Yes, that's today's show notes. Okay, so here's the issue. That MSG we know is toxic for many, many people. Whenever we're working, especially with children that are dealing with any type of autism spectrum-based disorder, ADHD, any type of Asperger's-based syndrome. And again, all of this is on a spectrum. I had this conversation with my health coaching team the other day. It's like there's no one thing as autism, and there's no one thing as schizophrenia. There's a spectrum. It's why we call it a spectrum of disorders. And I would rather say imbalances. I don't like the word disorder. I don't think it's appropriate. I think imbalances, the greater the imbalance, well, the higher the level of schizophrenia, the higher the level of autism, right? Because there's greater imbalances. Well, here's what I've seen. Mental health based imbalances, autism, ADHD, learning disabilities, executive functioning disorder, again, a lot of childhood-based issues, skin rashes, brain fog, neurological issues, flushing of the face, higher blood pressure, potentially cholesterol levels, potentially because of inflammation, gut-based issues, bloating. I said skin rashes, headaches, migraines. I automatically look at what's going on with this person's diet. Are they using things that are higher in yeast or even hidden foods, or foods, I should say, that have hidden forms of yeast, which I'm going to go over with you today. Because the bottom line is this: they both break down to a process called glutamate, or a specific protein, I should say, called glutamate. And that glutamate in many individuals is not an issue, and it can actually be used potentially for good, for GABA, or it can be used potentially for good with like glutamine. But you have to understand is that not everybody processes and breaks this down well. This is why we do have unique biochemistry. And there's a lot of people out there that can get much better breaking it down through specific nutrients. I'll talk about that on a future show. But again, the bottom line is this, is that one particular food could be fine for another individual, but hurt the other. So from my clinical practice, and especially now that it's virtual and I'm teaching to people, hundreds of thousands of people every single week, I have to give you the things that are right for 90+% of the population. And nutritional yeast is not right for 90+% population. Now you might be taking it and you might feel great. And for you, I say phenomenal. That's fantastic. But if you're a health practitioner and you're recommending nutritional yeast for everyone, you have to be careful, because we know that is a neurotoxin, that it literally creates a toxicity inside of the body for people that are not able to process monosodium glutamate, or technically just glutamate, properly. And that ends up as many of the issues that I just spoke about. Plus, for adults, it might not show up as much of the childhood-based issues, but it does show up as the migraines, the inflammation, the flu-like symptoms over the body, the flushing, especially when drinking alcohol. There's other reasons for this too. Sometimes an accelerated heart rate, that's a big one too. Kids might have tantrums or outbursts, or they might not be acting like themselves, but adults can get irritable and angry and kind of reclusive as well when they're using these, or there might be outbursts too. So I just wanted to state that for you. This is really a problem. There's a lot of people as well that say, well, it's only for people with a yeast allergy. You have to understand, allergies are a small percentage of the population. It's sensitivities that are a larger percent. And then there's a spectrum of sensitivities. And keep in mind, there is sensitivities, not just IgA sensitivity. So the I in front of it just means immunoglobulin. Just think of immune cell, that's all. So there's IgA, there's IgE, there's IgM, there's IgG. Now, there are others as well, all right? There's plenty of other immunoglobulins, but those are the ones that we look at for the most part in terms of environmental or food-based sensitivities. The A's, the E's, those are kind of first line, right? Then we've got a little bit delayed, which is IgM, and then we've got a delayed response, a latent response, which is IgG. And typically you'll see them flow a lot of times from first response to moderate, and then with chronic-based issues, it becomes IgG. And then if it's really chronic, you see a suppressed IgG immune system. And again, we see that in a clinical practice all the time, especially with people with autoimmune issues, especially with rheumatoid arthritis. So again, we're taking this from real world practice, working with over 250,000 people. We've got a lot of data. So what I'm sharing with you is this. It's not always an allergy, it's a sensitivity, right? And then there are spectrums of that sensitivity. High sensitivity, moderate, low. And there's every one in between. But what we also see is anxiety in adults, panic disorders in adults, mood-based issues, a spectrum of mental health-based imbalances. We sometimes see menstrual irregularity, and that's simply based on inflammation and stress in the body. We see respiratory issues, sometimes because of the constriction from the inflammation, sometimes the accelerated heart rate, right? Body's producing what? More norepinephrine, right? Because that's getting the person in the fight or flight. We see weight gain, we see water retention, kind of swelling of the body. I talked about like the flu-like symptoms. These are all things that happen beyond, again, the bloating, gas, diarrhea, or constipation of the digestive system. So all of these things, again, are not in your head. That's why I present this to you, because people are always saying, well, my doctor just tells me it's all in my head. It's not your head. It's a real thing. It's just, I can guarantee you that your medical doctor in medical school never studied the potential dangers of essentially glutamate. And it's from gluten, and it can be from yeast, and a lot of these issues of how it's broken down in the body. They certainly didn't take nutritional biochemistry. So what I want to share with you is this. What do we look for then with foods? All right, well, let's go label first. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes it'll actually be labeled as it's called hydrolyzed vegetable protein. You might say, oh, okay, hydrolyzed vegetable protein. I don't hear yeast. I don't hear MSG. I don't hear glutamate. I don't hear gluten. It's still there, all right? Hydrolyzed vegetable protein. Autolyzed yeast. Hydrolyzed yeast. Yeast extract. Certain soy extracts. Now, I'm not talking about the way that you get phosphatidylserine to help calm the adrenals. I'm talking about a soy extract that's used in things like soy sauce, okay? And then whenever you see sometimes protein isolate, it doesn't always mean that. So again, for example, when you see natural flavors on a nutritional supplement, it doesn't mean MSG. It doesn't mean corn. It doesn't mean any of those things. You don't know what it means. It's the FDA forces you to put natural flavors. We use organic apple extract or an organic vanilla extract. Has nothing to do with yeast, has nothing to do with MSG, totally different. But again, that's not FDA, FTC requirements are totally different. Some of them could be from corn. Some of them could be from yeast, right? You don't necessarily know, but you can always ask. Like that's the thing, you can always ask. Protein isolate. Again, going back to that because you say, oh, protein isolate, what does it mean? Well, we don't know what it's isolated from, right? Is it isolated from yeast? Is it isolated from gluten? Is it isolated from any type of glutamate containing product? We don't necessarily know. We need to look specifically at what that is coming from, all right? So that's important to look at it. So let's go over some of the products or foods that would be higher in these things, all right? So really important. Believe it or not, yeast can be and does live on a lot of different cheese-based products, a lot of aged-based products, a lot of fermented products, right? Really important to look at that. There are people that drink kombucha and don't do really well on it. There are people that eat aged cheese and just don't do really well on it. That's important to look at it because for a lot of people, again, those foods don't necessarily work for them, even though a lot of people might swear by kombucha. I've had people tell me all the time, how do you not drink kombucha? Kombucha is so good for you. And I asked them, I was like, please explain to me how kombucha is so good for me. I just want to know. I'm not saying that I disagree with you. I just want to know why you believe kombucha is so good for you, why you're spending $5 on a bottle of kombucha when you could get literally a day's supply of all your omegas and all your vitamins and all your minerals and probiotic and your enzymes, like all that, and you're spending on a $5 bottle of kombucha. Like, is it really better? Because I just want to know, like I want to understand people's thought process. And typically they'll just say, well, like it has probiotics in it and prebiotics. I'm like, great. Which probiotics does it have in it? And they don't know. And I'm not doing it to make them feel bad. What I ask people to do is question and ask why. Why is this good for me? How does this help me? So that you learn it at a deeper level, so that you actually know why it is you're doing what you're doing, so that you can also teach the next generation. I can't teach the next generation, the generation after that. We all have to, right? I'm teaching my kids. I hope that they one day teach their kids. They will be their parents. I will only be their grandparents. I will not be with them all day, every day. We need to teach our kids. They're not going to get it in school, certainly not going to get it from the media. And if anything, if big pharma, and that's with a PH and an F, if they're able to get to your kids, well, they're going to have them on cereal and fruit juice and who knows, right? Back in my day, it was Fruity Pebbles and Lucky Charms, all these great foods that we loved. Well, we didn't know, right? People still don't know today. A lot of people listen to this podcast, they know, they're aware. But that doesn't mean that it's spread really like we need to. The message has to get out there. All right, let me give you a couple more, and that will be our conclusion for the show. Most bakery-based products, if it rises, it usually has yeast. Not always, but most of the time. Most breads, I know sourdough doesn't, but it's a different story. It still has gluten, typically. You can make gluten-free. I know, I get it. There are better alternatives. We talked about that last week. Muffins, biscuits, croissants, a lot of these things can have yeast in them. A lot of cereals, plenty of alcohols, vinegar. I've talked about it before. Fermented-based foods. Check to see if there's yeast. Some mushrooms can have a lot of yeast. Sauerkraut, talked about that as well. Dried fruits can be possible, yeah. Buttermilk, we're looking at some yogurt, soy sauce, miso, tamarind, tofu can, and certain types of, I would say leftovers, foods that have been left out or they've been sitting in your fridge for a bit. So these are all areas to look at it, but honestly, begin to read your labels, understand that dairy and gluten for the most part are not your friend. You can certainly make exceptions to that rule, and I get it, I understand it, but what I'm trying to do is help out the majority of the people out there that may not know why them or their child is dealing with a lot of mental health-based imbalances, learning disabilities, and a lot of health issues in general. Look at autoimmune, look at inflammation, look at migraines, look at fatigue, look at skin rashes, all these issues can come, believe it or not, from the foods that we're eating. So hopefully this has been helpful. Next step, what would I do? Do something like the 21-day functional medicine detox. I mean, do something like that. Work with your integrative health practitioner, run a lab, like whatever works for you. I don't want you to feel like you have to do always, necessarily what I'm saying. I would love you to follow the path. I know that it works, but I don't want you to ever confuse the information that I'm providing you and the specific actions that I believe that you should take. I know most people want me to give those, but I never want there to seem like there's any conflict or anything like that. I can just tell you this, when you do a 21-day functional medicine detox, you get to eliminate these foods, you get to eliminate these things. And after 21 days, you're feeling pretty phenomenal. And then what we teach you after that is simply to begin to add these foods back in one at a time and find out what your specific triggers are, what your sensitivities are. And you're able then to do that and take that information with you for the rest of your life. That's the amazing thing. You do it now, you learn it for the rest of your life. You can pass it on to your children as well. So that's what it's all about. For more on the detox, you can just go to equi.life/detox. If you want a free course on it to find out why it's the number one thing that we do in our practice, not just me, but other integrative health practitioners, functional medicine doctors, naturopathic doctors, functional medicine MDs, you name it. You can go to equi.life, equi.life/detox-course, completely free. It's a $300 course, yours free, to teach you more about it. So that's it. That is today's show. Any links that I have will be at stevencabral.com/2027. I appreciate you. I thank you. And of course, if this show was helpful, please do feel free to share it with anyone else you believe it could serve. Take care, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into today's show, and I want to share with you this exclusive offer going on right now over at equi.life, but it is for our podcast listeners and email newsletter subscribers only, and that is because we are not allowed to sell CBD-based products on EquiLife for various regulatory reasons. However, we are actually giving away our brand new CBD pain relief cream on all qualifying orders over $129 over at equi.life. That means you get this brand new pain relief cream that contains 2 very powerful Ayurvedic-based herbs, 2 things that I used for many years when I was practicing in not only my own practice, but overseas in clinics. And that is with camphor oil that we used for aching joints, skin irritations, etc. It's also great for the skin to help rebuild collagen. So that was really fantastic for people dealing with joint-based pain. And then menthol for those dealing with muscle aches, inflexibility, inflammation as well. So all of that combined with a broad spectrum CBD oil that's going to give you all of that powerful pain relief. So if you're looking for a pain relief cream that enables you to get your body moving again, you'll want to check out equi.life. That's equi.life. It will show up as pain relief cream when you check out, completely free on all qualifying orders while supplies last over $129. Check it out over at equi.life.